What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. This is the Fantasy Heat Check. Of course, I got my boy Cody. We're good.
Look, man, there is a beautiful, beautiful thing happening in the world tonight. No, Jesus is not returning, right? Godzilla is not rising from the ocean, but the beauty that we do get to see is football with NFL jerseys on our television that isn't some replay at a local dive bar. I am so pumped. Football is back, LQ.
Football.
Oh, man. It gets the juices flowing. I mean, I don't know how you cannot be stoked to be able to watch football on TV.
Yeah, I mean, we got two teams. You know, we're not going to see the starters, of course, but we got two teams that have depth. And I'm really excited to maybe see Michael Gallup for a few series, maybe see, Najee Harris for a couple runs. Nothing too crazy. I don't want these guys to get injured, but it'll be good to see them with, numbers and name on the back of their, jerseys and be able to showcase somewhat of what they can do. So NFL football is back.
Dude, that feels so good to say. Feels so good to say. But speaking of Dwayne Haskins season, get out of here, bro.
Listen, I want to see him as well, but
the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Might see him Haskins.
I don't believe.
No, he's beating Mason Rudolph in camp right now.
That's like winning a race against a horse with no legs, pal. Like, what do you?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, look,
you gotta give him credit.
I think that there might have been a vast over-evaluation on Dwayne Haskins as a prospect coming out of college. I just personally am not a fan, or I'm not a believer in Dwayne Haskins. I hope he does well against literally anybody but the Bengals, but I'm not a believer. But we'll see. I've been proven wrong before, but not in fantasy. I tell you what, camp news, dude. This has been. I don't know if it's just because like football's back and like the onslaught of NFL stuff that is hitting our faces has been high, but I feel like we've had a lot of people, like a lot of news coming out of camp the last couple of days. So
it's been great.
LQ, I love it. I'm glad that it's back. But LQ, what's standing out to you from a camp news standpoint?
So obviously we have to touch on the injuries. I mean, the camp news can't always be good, right? But Quentin Nelson, he's out with the same foot injury as well. You guys probably heard about it, but if you've been living under a rock, he is out as well. He will miss 5 to 12 weeks. But the good news with him, he's trying to basically rehab, do everything mentally he can do within 5 weeks because he's like really stoked up to get back out there. He's like, F that. I'm going to get back the earliest, rehab that I can do and get back, ready for week 1. I mean, I love that attitude from a lineman. He's a bully in the trenches, and he's obviously one of those guys that, is a leader. So I definitely would love to see him back week 1. But, like I said, not all camp news can be good because moving on to the next injury, AJ Green. A lot of people are out on AJ Green. Everybody's saying AJ Green can be AJ Green. But, hey, it's an injury. He left practice. It's not too serious. He didn't return, so it's still being monitored. But listen, I'm in on AJ Green based on his price. But AJ Green is still AJ Green, right, Cody?
Look, as a Bengals fan, I am rooting for AJ Green. I hope he excels in Arizona. That being said, I don't think we are on the same page on this AJ Green. Love the guy, love the talent. You have to understand what you're getting with AJ Green, and this is a part of it, right?
Yeah.
So at best, he's a wide receiver 2 on a what should be a fairly fantasy friendly offense, which is at his price. Is a great return on his value.
If he's going so late in drafts, right? And the same thing, the other guy, Odell Beckham, he's a value this year. Everybody's like, he's electric, he's this, he's that. I get the talent gap. But if we look at it since, rookie season for Odell Beckham, he only played 2 more games than AJ Green since 2014. So they're both on the same boat of being injury prone, correct?
Agreed.
So why is everybody in on Odell Beckham but not on AJ Green when his price is basically free.
So I think recency bias has a lot to do with it, right? People are still, after being scorned by AJ Green last year and the year before, right? That's 2 straight years now where we have seen very minimal production, very minimal production. I think where the difference comes in is AJ Green is locked in as that number 2 target.
Yes.
And I think Odell Beckham is locked in as the number 1 target for the Browns. Now, the number 1 target on the Cardinals has a lot more impact from obviously DeAndre Hopkins is an animal, but being a number 1 target in that offense means more because the passing volume is higher for the Cardinals than it is for the Cleveland Browns. Yep. They're a run first team, and for good reason. They're very, very good at it. Don't get me wrong. Love AJ Green. I just don't think that's a fair comparison to compare him to Odell Beckham Jr. Now, AJ, you can't draft AJ Green with the expectation that he is going to be the AJ Green of old. What you can draft AJ Green at is the expectation that there are going to be some weeks when healthy that he can make your starting lineup. And now, AJ Green absolutely should be rostered above Rondale Moore, and he should absolutely be rostered above Christian Kirkwood and any other wide receiver on that Arizona Cardinals offense.
I get it.
But in redraft,
are you ready for some heat, Cody?
What is the title of the show? Am I ready for some heat? Have you seen the big ass graphic?
Listen, AJ Green, top 25. Book it, buy it, bring home the gold. Flip it too.
LQ, you are a big pizza guy. I'm a big Skyline chili guy. We know this. All right. I will bet you a pizza, a New Jersey pizza.
Yes.
And you can pay for my Skyline order. That's about the same price.
Okay.
I will bet that he's outside the 35. I bet he's outside the top 35 wide receivers. And you bet that he's inside the 25. If it's between 25 and 35, it's a wash. We'll buy each other food. We'll get a meal out of it. But I'm betting he's outside the top 35. I'm out on AJ Green. I love the guy, love the talent. He's just not. He's not.
Shane, this year, top 25.
Shane. See, Shane's my boy, but he understands the wisdom that I have locked in here. I've watched every snap of this dude for the last 10 years of my life.
And he hasn't been happy for the last 2 years. Am I lying?
We'll see. We'll see. I'm out on AJ Green.
He hurt in 2019, or he didn't want to play. He didn't want to mess up his chances for extension.
We'll see.
Players fake injury all the time. I hope people know this, right?
Oh.
Especially when they won a contract. Because Kenny G was not hurt. Kenny G was not hurt. He wanted to get paid.
That boy's hip was fine. Are you kidding me?
He was out clubbing in Vegas.
Yeah, it was and speaking of Kenny G, right, we have to talk about him because, again, that injury popped up 2 to 4 weeks with a hamstring. He should be good to go by the start of camp. That is fine, and that's great. When you as you are drafting, make sure you keep an eye on where they are at with Kenny Golladay. If this injury does not progress, it could hamstring injuries are something that have lingered into the regular season from time to time. It's not always an injury that just goes away.
It's a thing. It's a lingering injury. So going into draft day, his ADP isn't too crazy. It's like in the 5th, 6th round. I kind of want to fade him based off the reports of how he started camp. Started off slow, struggling, trying to get chemistry connection. It's, something that we know happens when you go to a new team as like a stud wide receiver 1. So everybody has their struggles, but I'm not liking this injury now for him to start the season off with a lingering hamstring injury. I mean, he could be out, by week 3, week 4, early in the stages. And you're sitting there looking at him like, damn, I took him in the 5th round or the 6th round. That round for wide receivers are pretty deep where you can get some good value there. So I'm kind of fading Kenny G, until further notice.
Yeah. And I was kind of out on Kenny Golladay just solely based off of the Giants as a whole. I don't think that offense is going to be incredibly efficient, and I'm sure Steph is listening.
I think it'll be better though. I think it'll be better. It'll be better.
How much better though?
They have Saquon, so they didn't have him.
That is true, right? They're getting Saquon back, and Kenny Golladay is far and above the best wide receiver that Daniel Jones has ever had. I'm not a believer in Jason Garrett. I think he is a bottom tier offensive coordinator. I'm not a believer in that offensive line. And for a quarterback that has, for what Daniel Jones has been good at, his deficiencies are very evident, and it's that he has a hard time holding on to the football. And that's the last thing you want is to have a quarterback who has a hard time holding on to the football with a bad offensive line.
Yeah, ball security and QB decisions, like your football IQ, looking a little mid-tier, you know what I mean? Not going to say terrible, but I really feel like once he focuses in on securing the ball, because he can get the job done on the ground as well. Like, he has some wheels on him. I mean, the one video of him running for like 60 yards and then fall, but he has some wheels on him. He can be mobile if need be. So I think they'll slightly be better than what they were last year.
He's currently being drafted as wide receiver 24, according to Fantasy Pros ADP. There are a couple of guys around that area that, like, I think he kind of falls in line with. I would rather, so the two guys immediately following him, I would much rather have Deontay Johnson, would much rather have Brandon Ayouk. Love those two.
100%. Yeah.
Love those two players. But I would much rather take Kenny Golladay over Odell Beckham, over Juju Smith-Schuster, over DJ Chark. So I think he's right about where he should be. I'm not going into drafts targeting him as one of my top 2 wide receivers. But if you can get him as a wide receiver 3 flex guy, I think that's a really solid spot for Kenny Golladay to go. And I think you can rely on him week to week. We got a fantasy mailbag.
Fantasy mailbag early, mid-show.
I love that.
Should both Seattle wide receivers, Metcalf and Lockett, be top 20? Cody, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, so if you watch a video that LQ put out on his Twitter handle a while back at Real Deal Fantasy, make sure you guys give that a follow. But he posted a video that a little fantasy hot take that I put out, that I didn't think Russell Wilson was going to be a top 12 quarterback this year. And my reason being is that I think the passing volume declines. Now, if you were going to have your passing volume decline, they were 20th of 32 in near the bottom third of the league in passing volume last season. Do I think that 2 wide receivers can finish in the top 20? I do not. So I'm going to ride with the talent on here. I love DK Metcalf's talent. I don't like where he's being drafted at wide receiver 5. I think that's a little high, but I still think he finishes in the top 20. Tyler Lockett's currently being drafted as wide receiver 23. I think he finishes outside the top 20. And I think the ADP is kind of right that he'll be close, right? Because Tyler Lockett has been hyper efficient his entire time he's played with Russell Wilson. Like that, the efficiency has always been there. I'm just concerned about the volume this year, especially in PPR. They brought in Dwayne Eskridge. They brought in Gerald Everett. Like, those are improvements off of what their third wide receiver and what their tight end was the last year. So I think Lockett is I think he's a wide receiver 3 for me, but
100%.
It is where it is.
High end, wide receiver 2 weeks, but I don't know. I don't know top 20. I can't put him inside the top 20. There's so many good guys. There's so many good wide receivers there. I feel like, DK might stand out because he might be the touchdown guy. But if they're looking to run the ball more and throw less, it's not a good sign that, both of them can finish top 20. I'm not going to say they're not top 25 wide receivers because it's possible. Lockett's at what, 23? He could finish right at 23. So I don't see both of them getting in. It's either one or the other.
I do think Lockett has a safe floor, right? Like, he's not going to drop out of the top 30, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think he's going to, cease to exist. But I think he was like wide receiver 35 on a week-to-week basis the last 6 to 8 weeks of the year. Yeah. So there is a little concern there. But he's a safer target. I know there are ups and downs, but like as a whole, I'll take Tyler Lockett, just not in the top 20.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let's move on to some Hollywood Brown news. I mean, he has a hamstring injury. He had one the year before, and, Harbaugh comes out, the head coaching staff basically saying it's more serious than what they thought. So this is a red flag. Now everybody's like, on the Sammy Watkins bus, they're on, the Bateman bus and all those other things. And I think this kind of just pushes Hollywood Brown either further and further down on rankings, ADPs, and etc. I really think he's like an easy fade. I think people are living off of recency bias, how he finished the season, scoring in like every single game, like the last 5 weeks. And it's like, okay, cool. But I need more than that. I need more, consistency throughout the week. I need week to week, trustworthy. I need to start and forget. I can put him in my wide receiver 2 or flex spot and not worry about him throwing up 3 points. Like, nah, with Bateman there, Sammy Watkins there, that kind of just already pushes him to the side for that target share because you still have Mark Andrews there and there's still a run-first offense. So a lot of variables going on there. What do you think about Hollywood Brown this year, Cody?
I mean, Baltimore was last in pass attempts per game last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that they went out and they got Bateman and they got Sammy Watkins. And that's because Hollywood Brown wasn't it. And the guy's talented, but he hasn't been able to put it together on the field. And this doesn't help. At this point in the season or in the start of the season, I would not be shocked if Hollywood Brown was the 4th in line for targets on that offense. With Andrews being up there above him, Bateman being above him, and Sammy Watkins being above him if Sammy Watkins can stay healthy, which is never the case.
Yeah, if he gives us at least 12 games, he'll still manage to get more targets than
and that's coming on an offense that doesn't have much passing volume. Like the ceiling for Hollywood Brown is so low because he's already not going to be able to get that volume.
He won't get 100
now
targets.
He has to split it, right?
Yeah, so there's
not I am all out on Hollywood Brown. There won't be a league that I have him this year.
Not even
somebody will draft him before I will even think about it.
Everybody's saying best ball. I'm not with it.
Okay. It's cool.
It's like
here's the thing. I love best ball. Like best ball is a really fun format, but like at the same time, most people, like most of the general public plays redraft and in your standard 10, 12 team leagues with like 1 quarterback, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back. You're not drafting Hollywood Brown. At least I'm not. Somebody will make that mistake. I will not be.
Now moving on to Devonta Smith with a sprained knee. This is very unfortunate. I really feel like, it's nothing too crazy, nothing too serious, but I hate when rookies get injured, especially in the leg area. We all know the jokes that he's skinny as hell, but it's to the point to where like I wish they kind of like what should I say? How should I say this? Stop putting so much pressure on him because clearly he's the number 1 option there. I mean, you have Zach Ertz, trade rumors, et cetera, but I see the film, I see like the highlights and stuff. It looks like he's out there balling, putting his all out there. I think the Eagles should be more cautious on him. I understand rookies need, these reps, but this injury is just unfortunate. This just looks like a soreness, overworked, type ordeal. He has like trying to put on a show for everybody, but he's obviously your best wide receiver. And you're coming off of a season where you had no receivers at all. You had 2 old guys that were like basically injured the entire season, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, and then you get this gem, you get this Lamborghini in the draft next year, and it's like, man, you should probably be more cautious with him. They should treat him like how Darrell Henderson's being treated right now. No chance you see him in preseason. They're being limited on his snaps. I mean, Devonta Smith is going to go out there and ball out. I mean, he doesn't really need like to go out there and like showcase, like overwork himself. So it's just unfortunate with this injury.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's going to affect his ADP a little bit, but I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Like out of all the things that like I am concerned about with Devonta Smith, a lot of that comes with the Eagles offense and how efficient they're going to be, how they're going to utilize him in the red zone, not with his talent. And as long as this isn't something that carries on into the regular season, it's going to be something I keep an eye on as we get closer to fantasy drafts. But I'm not worried at this point. And I know some people are going to be like, well, he missed camp. This dude played at Alabama for 4 years. Like, he understands how to play the game of football. I'm not worried about him missing time in camp and not being able to, run. Like, this dude is incredibly intelligent, and his football IQ is off the charts. I'm not worried about Devonta Smith. He'll ball out. And if his ADP drops any further than I think it's right around 30, 32. If his ADP drops, that I'll eat that up. If I can get him as my fourth wide receiver, like, he'll lead a team in targets. Like, how often are you going to get that as a guy?
Like, that's it.
Yeah, the guy won the Heisman. Like, he's that good. If you can get a guy with that level of talent in the fourth round, or not in the fourth round, as your fourth wide receiver.
Wide receiver, it's mint.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
No-brainer.
Crazy, man. So let's move on to some risers. I mean, let's stay into the Eagles camp. Now with Devonta Smith dealing with a sprained knee, Jalen Reagor, or however you want to say his name, is making some big plays. Did you see that one-handed catch he had in the end zone today?
Morning? Hey, you want to talk about a lot of guys who make one-handed catches that you're down on, and then you're going to sit here and say that Jalen Reagor is a one-handed catch machine and you're high on him?
Listen, I know where you're going with this.
But in all seriousness, I'm not out on Reagor yet, and I'm hoping that he can make some plays and be better in that offense. I think a lot of his usage last season kind of came down to coaching and what they wanted to do. 100%. We'll see. I'm not spending an arm and a leg for him. If you want to get him as a guy, way late in your drafts.
He's one of those fives, depth. He's depth.
He's currently being drafted as wide receiver 65.
Yeah, so him and Ruggs.
You're throwing a dart. I would much rather have him than a lot of the guys that are going in that range. Like, I would take him over Jamison Crowder, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, Nelson Agholor. Maybe not Nelson. But around that range, that there are a few guys that I would take over Jalen Reagor. You know what? It's a dart throw. I think his ceiling is a little bit higher than some of those guys. Like, I don't. It is what it is.
Number 2 wide receiver, but not the number 2 target. He could be the third target on the team, but the number 2 wide receiver should be, decent, especially for the price.
Again, in a team that doesn't have a ton of passing volume with Jalen Hurts at the helm. And I know a lot of that has to do with game script and the weird shit that they did at the end of the season, but we'll see.
It should change. New offense, new head coach. So let's move on to Jets. Now, Elijah Moore is having a very strong camp. He is lighting it up, and I cannot wait to see him Saturday night when I go to their training camp. But I think with him killing it, him standing out, I really feel like, we're not giving Zach Wilson enough credit, man. Some of the balls that we're seeing in these highlights are, like, right on the numbers. And at the highest point, Moore's out there just being electric out there.
Look, if you were to tell me that Elijah Moore would lead all rookie wide receivers in fantasy points, I would be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not sit here and tell you, like, there's no chance, not like no way in hell. You know what I mean? Like, that's certainly in his range of outcomes. And it's going to be an immediate fade because he's on the Jets, right? Like, everybody is going to sit here and go, well, Jets wide receiver, they suck. Like, rookie quarterback. And they drafted the rookie quarterback that, like, a lot of people have hate on. You know what I mean? Because it's like, pretty boy, BYU, played against no competition.
Disney Channel.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, he's got a Disney Channel face. The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody with his ass. I'll start with you.
You ever get that joke? The Zach and Cody joke?
Literally all the time. All the time. That was like, I had a friend of mine growing up, like, one of my groomsmen in my wedding, his name is Zach. And they're like, the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. It's like, sick, dude. We're 24. Like, show is hot. Like, House twins are, like, married now. Relax.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. But back to the topic at hand. I'm a big fan of Elijah Moore. And I'm hoping that I can get him in a couple of drafts this year. Because I really do think people are seeing Jets wide receiver Elijah Moore, and they are focusing more on Jets wide receiver than they are Elijah Moore. And I know we talked about this, dude. Like,
Crowder's the only one last year you were able to draft, but I think more like I'm comfortable with taking him as my wide receiver 3, 100%. Especially if I got 2 stud, wide receivers are deep here. So I really feel like at every single mock draft or every single draft I have done, I always came out with 2 number 1 wide receivers. Like I really feel that way. Like my best combination, I have Keenan Allen and Robert Woods. That is like a freaking gem there. And then to have Elijah Moore, who's killing it right now, I'll take that risk. I'll take that risk with him as my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and you might not even have to spend that high to get him. So
round guys that you can get.
Yeah, I'm a big trends guy, as a gambler. I love me some trends. The last 2 wide receivers that came out of Ole Miss were pretty good. AJ Brown and DK Metcalf were okay.
They were a dynamic duo.
They're pretty good at football.
I always said AJ Brown was better. I always said he was the better wide receiver. DK just looked like a freak athlete. And it's being
Elijah Moore might be good. Yeah, we'll see.
He's going to be good. He made AJ Brown cry. Going on to the next riser. You're going to enjoy this one, Cody. Jonnu Smith is out there killing it in camp, being used all over the field. There's a video that was just posted yesterday of him running out of the backfield, lined up as a running back, and it's a red zone play. He is going to score touchdowns, people. That's all that needs to be said. And he's a guy that's going in super, super late rounds. He could be your tight end 1 by the time the season ends. It's over.
LQ, I'm not gonna victory lap this early.
Do it.
But when it comes to this,
do it.
We were right.
If you
go back to the first episode of the Fantasy Heat Check, we said part of the reason that we are so excited about Jonnu Smith is that he can be utilized all over the field. Yes. You know that's going to happen. We're seeing it in camp. It's coming to fruition. Get Jonnu Smith on your team. 100%. He is good at football. And now I'm going to clip that and post it all over the internet because, God, I love a good victory lap. But in all seriousness, like he's so good. And everybody was so worried. They're like, oh, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, like they can't be on the field. They're not the same player. Like they play the same position, but they're not the same player.
No, completely polar opposites. Like, have you ever watched him in open space? How fast he is, how elusive he is, how physical he is. Like, are you nuts? Have you seen this guy? This dude's jacked. First of all, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. They didn't pay him that guaranteed money for nothing. He's going to be a playmaker. Just simple as that. I can literally see him being probably one of the best pass catchers on that offense. And then it might be close with Jacoby Myers, but I'll pump the brakes there. It's preseason camp. I'll hold off. Week 4, I'm doing that victory lap.
I love it. But I'm glad we were on the same page there. It makes me feel good when another smart fantasy mind is like,
how far are we on the show sheet and you finally agree with me?
Oh, get out of here, dude. Relax. I just disagreed on AJ Green. Okay.
Listen, I was very taken back by that because you're a Bengals fan. What the hell? That was your one.
Look, I love the guy. He's my boy, but like at the same time, I'm just not in. Like I'm trying to win fantasy football like this year. Like I'm a Bengals fan, but I'm also still trying to win, right? And I don't think AJ Green's going to help me do that. It's a shame in the subscribers league LQ. Not only do I have Jonnu Smith on my roster because of course I do tight end premium league, and I have John. That's a shame, dude. It sucks to be really good. But the other guy that I have on my roster is who we're going to talk about next.
Yes, sir.
Brandon Ayouk standing out in 11 on 11s in 49ers camp.
Yes. He's looking like a stud.
Okay. He had a phenomenal end of the year last year, right? 2 polar opposite parts of the seasons. First half, on and off injured, wasn't really utilized incredibly well. Right? And at the other hand, second half of the year, utilized a ton, dominated in fantasy, like on a points per game basis. He was right up there with Justin Jefferson the last half of the season. But Deebo Samuel was out and George Kittle was out. They're both back now. What Brandon Ayouk do you think we're more likely to see this year? Are we going to see first half of the season or are we going to see second half of the season?
I'm going to go play devil's advocate and be mid. season. So when I say mid-season, he's going to be in between of what, we saw at the end and the beginning, as long as he can stay healthy. Debo, I really feel like he's like so physical. He's so great in open space. He gets a lot of screen passes, but Brandon Aiyuk can do the same thing. He's like a mini Debo. This has been said before. Now, the variables of, Kittle being out as well, and then Aiyuk basically turning up that back end of the season, I think he could find the in-between where he could be the number two option. He can literally be behind Kittle. He could be behind, Debo, maybe. We don't know. As long as these guys can all stay on the field healthy, that offense is going to be great to where there's going to be enough volume for each of them to be fantasy relevant. Obviously, Kittle's not going to be your red zone guy, so you need a red zone guy. Is that going to be Aiyuk? Is it going to be Samuel? Who knows? It could be split there. So you could easily see Aiyuk with 6 to 8 touchdowns, and Debo between, the 6 to 8 touchdowns as well. But who's going to be the QB? That we don't know. But I think it's going to be Trey Lance. But I'm really, really like feeling this vibe with Brandon Aiyuk. I'm really feeling, him standing out this early in camp. So I might be back on the Brandon Aiyuk train. I might be back on. One foot's on the train.
Hey, I'll give you a ticket, man, because I never hopped off. I'm a big fan of Brandon Aiyuk. I think he's going to have a great year. I don't think Kevin thinking it's all going to come down to Jimmy G.
It really is. It really is.
But at the end of the day, like, is that the worst thing in the world? Like, Jimmy G is not an incompetent quarterback by any means. Like,
I think
he's absolutely serviceable. And for what the 49ers do, like, he just needs to be a distributor, right? Like, he doesn't need to be he doesn't need to be a game-changing quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. But if he can get the ball into Ayuk's hands, and that's how that offense is.
Or Kirk Cousins. He could be any of these guys. He'll be very serviceable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. LQ, I'm going to read off I want your opinion on this. I'm going to read off this thing on the show sheet because I'm not sure that it's written correctly. It says Brian Edwards is getting T.O. and Randy Moss comparisons in camp from John Gruden. Randy Moss?
That's what kills me. Like, don't just throw names out there just to throw them out there. Like, Randy Moss, like the Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Brian freaking Edwards, year 2. Come on, come on, stop. Why are we lying? Why are we lying? This is embarrassing. He shouldn't have even did that interview. They should have just edited it out.
Now I might play devil's advocate here.
Oh God. Here we go.
Outside of Darren Waller, because obviously Darren Waller is going to dominate the passing game for Oakland.
Yes.
Who scores the most fantasy points out of wide receivers in Oakland? Because if you were to tell me Brian Edwards, I wouldn't be shocked. Aguilar's gone. Who else? They have Hunter Renfrow, Henry Ruggs, somebody like there's
John
still
Brown, but
John Brown.
It can be John. Listen, hear me out. My problem is solely on John Gruden, Derek Carr, their offensive line. That's literally where I'm at with it in that order of concern. The fact that John Gruden said his first pick in the NFL draft, Henry Ruggs, he needs to figure a way out to get him to fit into this scheme, to fit into this offense, this system. That is mind-boggling. That's the biggest red flag, though.
How do you draft a guy and then have to at 11 and then you're like, hey, we need to find a way to work him into the scheme. You didn't think about that before you drafted him, pal?
He said that in year 2. Going into year 2, you're thinking now of how to fit him into the scheme. Are you kidding me? What did you even
do last year? Like, did you not try to get him into the scheme last year? You're like, oh, we'll just let him play.
This is red flag. This is why I don't want any type of Raiders wide receiver, because it's like comments like that and then comments like this, T.O. and Randy Moss. Who are you lying to? Like, are you lying to yourself, trying to make yourself feel better? Like, yeah, I got this guy playing at a high level, but really once week 1 comes around, he's going to be mid-tier. Like, I'm not understanding like how this is going to play out, and I'm kind of off all wide receivers for the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. If like there are 32 teams in the NFL, if you were to tell me that the Raiders wouldn't have a wide receiver finish in the top 40, I would be absolutely I would absolutely be on board with that. I don't think they have a wide receiver finish in the top 40. There's a lot of it's going to happen a lot over the next couple of weeks as we get to the regular season. You're going to hear coaches talk, and you're going to hear coaches say things about their guys that they're super high on. And just remember, it's still camp
at its finest.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
Last year we had Mike Zimmer say that BC Johnson has carved out a nice role for himself in this offense, and that Justin Jefferson was going to be the third wide receiver there in Minnesota. Look, it's coach speak. It's still early. Trust your talent. Yeah. There's nobody on this Raiders pass catching crew outside of Darren Waller that because fantasy football should be fun, right? Drafting Raiders wide receivers just doesn't seem fun. So I'm out.
Let's get into some fallers though. So when I mean fallers, guys that are just going down on that draft board ranking, just going down in ADP, and unfortunately Denzel Mims, man, I really think it's just unfortunate, man. He's an electric talent. Like the little flashes we saw last season, small sample size, but I was hoping it would transition to this season, but hearing that he's working with the 2s, the 3s, he's just not fitting into the system. And it's why not? Just be better, be good. That's all we want.
Just play the football well. I
think it's the new system though. I don't think he's fitting in because you got to remember, a new coaching staff is coming in.
Yeah, new offensive coordinator, right? New scheme. Mm-hmm. We'll see. If that offense looks similar to San Francisco's, right? Because they pulled their, I believe their offensive coordinator was the 49ers passing game coordinator last year, right? They got Saleh in as the head coach. If that offense looks very 49ers-esque, I don't know if there's a whole lot of room for Mims. So for that reason, I'm out.
Yeah, you got to be out on that. I mean, until further notice, until we see something in preseason. I know we're going to see a lot of him in preseason, actually, because it's expendable at this point since he's not fitting in the system, but we shall see how that goes. But moving on to your boy, man, I'm going to just zip it up. I'm going to just let you figure out what's going on with your boy Joe Burrow, man.
The news comes out that he doesn't seem super confident, and he kind of has a little bit of concern for his knee. What did you expect? This dude is 8 months removed from a devastating knee injury. PTSD. He tore his ACL, had his knee rolled up on it. I'm pretty sure there was other ligament damage as well.
Yeah.
What did you expect from the guy? There's not a chance. The fact that he's going to be able to play week 1 is a miracle. I don't know how we're not necessarily a miracle, but it's impressive. How are we going to talk about a guy not being 100% 5 weeks ahead of that?
2 weeks ago, he said he's not 100% too.
Yeah, so and that's not. And you have to understand that when you're drafting Joe Burrow, he might not be 100% for the first couple of weeks. He is absolutely a guy that you want to I'm not an advocate of drafting multiple quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league. But if you're going to draft Joe Burrow, you need to have a second guy.
Is probably very much so because we just don't know. You got to be prepared.
And you
don't want to end up on the waivers looking at a freaking Nick Foles or one of those guys or Jimmy G.
Right. And there are some quarterback in a 1 quarterback league or even in a 2 quarterback superflex league, right? Your second quarterback, there's a lot of value you can get in guys around that. Matthew Stafford is going as quarterback 13. You can get Matt Ryan at 15, Kirk Cousins at 18. I'm fine with any of those guys if you want to pair him with Joe Burrow because we don't know at the first couple of weeks. And that's fine. Again, we are still 5 weeks out from NFL regular season football. It actually 5 weeks from today, we will get our first regular season action. So still early. Let's relax.
So I shouldn't be concerned about all my Joe Burrow shares, right?
No, I am not worried about. And I know people are I
have too many, by the way.
This is my Bengals fandom in me, but
I blame you. though. 100%.
Sorry, you listen to a smart man. I hate to, it's tough.
A smart gambling man, and
but in all seriousness, like I know a lot of people in the Bengals like fanhood on Twitter is concerned about the first couple of weeks, like, oh, the offenses look kind of stagnant and the defenses look great and blah blah. It's camp. Like there's some things that you need to pay attention to and some things you don't. This is one thing, don't pay attention to. Like, keep an eye on it, but relax a little bit. This is expected.
Yeah, it really is expected. I'm not going to get too worried about it. I only have him as a faller because his ADP does make us pump the brakes a little bit. It makes us to double think. And like you said, we need to handcuff a guy. We need to just basically be prepared for the worst. I'm not against that.
Understand where you're drafting him, right? You got to understand where you're drafting him at and what needs to happen for him to be successful. But moving on to our next faller, I'm not sure why he's on this list, LQ. So you wanna explain to me? Is it just a Jets thing? Like, what are we doing here?
So Michael Carter is falling down on the list, basically with recent reports. Man, you got to understand, Salah's coming from Shanahan offense. He's basically coming in. He's probably going to implement there as a running back committee. A running back committee is starting up because you have Tevin Coleman making plays. You have Ty Johnson even touching the ball, and Michael Carter is that guy that we want to so much be the number one running back there. We want him to be our Mostert. We want him to be the guy who's the majority going to be on the field, but I don't know if that's 100% happening. I mean, you have these no-name guys like Ty Johnson making a splash in camp. So Saturday, I will be going to the training camp to actually get my eyes on to see who's getting the reps, who's making plays, who's finding the hole, who has better vision, who's killing in pass catching. I'm pretty sure that's Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman is there basically to be, the pass catcher running back. And I think PPR formats, it's interesting. I'm not saying it's going to give us a J.D. McKissick or Nyheim Hines season. I really feel like, he'll be a pest if anything else. So Ty Johnson also is a guy that's running hard. He's been reported saying that he's making good plays. He's coming out of the backfield, catching passes as well. Who knows what his role would be? So I feel like we need to pump the brakes on Michael Carter. A well-known running back committee is on the way. And I think we don't need to get burned in those higher rounds where he was creeping up at.
Yeah. And if you are drafting him to be a bell cow running back, you are making a mistake. And that it just is what it is.
Yeah.
I like the guy, I like the talent, but
I was one of those people thinking probably early July, maybe late June, like, you know what, Michael Carter could be the bell cow there. He could be the guy. He can, fight off Ty Johnson. He could fight off a Tevin Coleman. Because everywhere Tevin Coleman been, it's kind of been mid-tier to low-tier or injured. So I really feel like, we're wishing and hoping for this, but, man, I don't see it happening.
I mean, you got to trust the talent, right? As of right now, and granted, Michael Carter is still a rookie, but as it stands, nobody on that backfield is a workhorse running back. And it just is what it is. So expect a lot of shuffling with the Jets running back crew this year. But
well then,
followers, man, and workhorse running backs.
The last fall for us. This only makes sense, right? Jonathan Taylor. He's definitely an ADP faller. He's going in the first round where I don't feel comfortable taking him in the first round anymore. Quentin Nelson injured, Wentz injury. It's kind of like, I don't know about Jonathan Taylor being the guy because, one, we see Jonathan Taylor, we think, bell cow. We know he's a bell cow.
Mm-hmm.
Colts organization, Frank Wright saying, he earned his spot to be the running back. I don't believe it. I don't 100% believe it. I'm more of like 60% of belief. The 40% in the back of my mind is Marlon Mack, the man crush they have on him. Nyheim Hines carving out a solid role for him to be a pass catcher, and they believe he could be an all-around back. There was times where we were seeing him and freaking Jordan Wilkins in the red zone on the 5-yard line. It didn't make sense. Those opportunities we expect for our first-round running back. We expect our first-round running back to be on the field more than 50% of the time because, believe it or not, guys like Devin Singletary was on the field more times than Jonathan Taylor was last season. When I hear that, that's like, why would I take this guy in the first round? He's not going to be on the field majority of the time. So I know we're looking at the back end of his season where the snap percentage just went up. But at the same time, it's like that playoff run was there, that hunger. They needed to win games. They needed to do this. They needed to do that. But Nyheim Hines is still very involved there. Marlon Mack is back, the man crush. It's just annoying to think that Marlon Mack will just completely fade away. Marlon Mack can easily get 10 touches a game, and that's a lot for a Marlon Mack.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not out on Jonathan Taylor from a sense of like everybody's like, oh, you gotta be all in or all out. And I think he's right around that back end RB1, high end RB2 range. Where he was being drafted for a while as the RB6, not a chance. And I'm not concerned with, and I understand that like having Quentin Nelson out is and Kevin, that schedule is like the Colts do have a fairly easy schedule, but they also have when they play their games isn't great from a like playing Thursday and then Sunday or Sunday night and then like Thursday and stuff like that. It's all kind of subjective, especially for strength of schedule, but I'm kind of concerned about Jonathan Taylor. And I just think that where he's going, there are some running backs that I would rather have Aaron Jones. I would rather have Austin Eckler. I would rather have, I'm going to say it, ain't I? I would rather have Joe Mixon.
Yeah!
I would rather have Joe Mixon. You made me say it. I'm not.
Mixon train is alive.
I just think purely from a touch standpoint, right? Like you hype on it all the time, LQ. Volume is king. Follow the volume. And we like when it comes down to it, who is taking away volume from Joe Mixon, right? You have a rookie running back in Chris Evans, and you have Samaje Perine, who has not been, he's nowhere near what Giovanni Bernard was in that Cincinnati Bengals offense. The other guys are like, don't get me wrong, Jonathan Taylor is going to be efficient when he gets the ball, and he's going to be great when he gets the ball. But the Colts are focused on winning football games. They're not focused on having phenomenal fantasy players, right? Like that's what that franchise is trying to do. And I think they try to win football games, and I think they try to keep one of their best athletes in Jonathan Taylor upright by limiting his touches. Like now, he's going to be, if he gets 15 to 18 touches a game, the dude's still going to be a stud, right? Just not at around one price. And that's fine.
How much of a stud is that offense going to be without Wentz, Quentin Nelson, all these other variables that we're not really digging deep and thinking about? I really feel like the first couple of weeks we might see them lean on the running game, and you might see some fantasy points here and there, but first round, I don't know. I'm not fading him completely. I just don't want him in the first round.
I think the Colts team and talent is good enough to still be competitive early on. And this might be a reach a little bit with where I'm going here. And it's always difficult to pull something like this off. The Colts' first 5 games are all against teams with 10 plus wins last season. Not only were they against teams with 10 plus wins, but a lot of those teams are very, very good defensively. Their schedule is the Seahawks at home. Their defense is all right. They played the Rams. That defense is pretty good. They play the Titans and they play the Dolphins. That defense is pretty good. They play the Ravens. That defense is really good.
God damn.
Those first 5 weeks, the Colts could start 0-5. If you are in a deficit, you're not going to run the ball a ton. You are going to be passing. Nyheim Hines was on the field for passing situations last year. That it just is where we stand, right? There's a chance that you can buy Jonathan Taylor low after week 5, and that schedule gets much, much more fantasy friendly. They get the Texans, then the 49ers, but then the Titans and the Jets and the Jags and the Bills, Buccaneers, and then the Texans. So they do have a chance. I think you're going to see Jonathan Taylor have a tough first half of the season and then have a better second half of the season. And a lot of it's going to come down to schedule. And if the Colts can get healthy, I think those two things happen at the same time and kind of propel them forward.
Yeah.
There's going to be a chance to buy the dip I think after that first part of the season. So maybe you try to do that on Jonathan Taylor. It's always hard to try to predict a trade before the season starts, but
yeah,
just something to get. I'm not. Don't hold your expectations super high for the first couple of weeks if you draft him. But LQ, do we have anything else in the fantasy mailbag or anything else we need to talk about before we get going this week?
We can hype up the fantasy mailbag because we need some
Yes.
questions for next week's show. So if you're watching, leave them on the YouTube page, or you can at us, DM us, whatever the case may be. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe on the YouTube page right now. So, hey, shout out to you guys watching. Big shout out to Kevin coming through with the questions.
Coming through with all the comments and the questions. Yeah. Big Kev, man, I appreciate you.
Next week, same time, every time. Fantasy
yes,
Heat
sir.
Check.
Tell your friends.
Cody, what you got planned for tonight? You can go ahead and
I appreciate you. All right, play to win fantasy. All right, Nick Scripps, an absolute stud out there in Chicagoland. I will be on his show this evening. Me, Chrissy Fantasy, a couple other people who are just really, really knowledgeable and entertaining in the fantasy space. So if you guys enjoy that content, absolutely come check us out. LQ, we're going to be having some more content coming out. The weekend's going to be fun. I'm sure we'll have some takes after the Hall of Fame game tonight at 8.
Yes.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait. So to ensure that you get all of the best of Real Deal Fantasy HQ content, be sure to follow LQ at Real Deal Fantasy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me at Smash It Sports. Our article guys and our dynasty guys and the daily fantasy dudes in our group are phenomenal. They don't get to flex during the off season like some of our dynasty content and our redraft content does. They are going to ball out if you are into DFS. So make sure you check us out as we get closer to this regular season. I am so excited. LQ, send us home.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure, again, like and subscribe. Leave a comment below on what you guys think of the episode, and we'll see you guys next week for another great episode of Fantasy Heat Check.